Okay. I call to order the January 17th, 2024 Student Achievement Committee of the whole meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. In the absence of Treasurer Wagner, I need a motion to nominate a board member to serve as Treasurer Pro Tem. Madam Vice President, do you have a nominee?
I nominate board member Craig.
Oh, it didn't pass the baton yet. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? You cannot answer, Mr. Craig, on that one. Okay, Mr. Craig is our Treasurer Pro Tem. And Mr. Guston, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Craig.
Here.
Mr. Lundy. Ms. Mapp.
Here.
Dr. Moffitt. Mr. Morosky.
Here.
Vice President Weinberg.
Here.
President Bolton.
Present. Thank you for that, Mr. Guston. We've convened and we're ready, and we're going to hit the agenda, and want to start, if I could, with personal privilege from the chair. I would like to address 2 items, and it has to do with some little housekeeping, and it's old business, new business. But before you, and if Member Mapp will pass those down, you got it already, thank you. 2 things. I want to remind board members to please sign the conflict of interest document. I think 3 of you have done that already, and we need the other folks to do that and hand that into Stavis when you've done that. And then the new item, and this pertains to our superintendent and treasurer as well. So Mr. Guston, if you'll relay this to Treasurer Wagner, we have new business in that the newly elected and sworn in president of OSBA, Sally Green, has expressed an interest in coming to Cincinnati to visit with us, and she would like to do that in March. Our March meetings are, we have 2 business meetings, the 4th and the 18th, and we have a COW meeting, as we once called it, on the 13th. And if you all could help me figure out who all will be here, I'd like us to, as many be here as possible. We're scheduled, so if you can communicate to me which or any of those meetings are the best, that would be great. We know we have to be here, right, Superintendent? Anybody else have a particular interest? She would like to see a board in action. She would like to see some of our schools. You might want to meet also Ms. Sellers with union representatives. So she's very open to doing all of that. We'll be looking as far ahead as March, and I know that's hard. Are there any absences that I would anticipate?
The only thing that I'll share is if she's looking to go to schools, I believe that March the 4th is a district PD day. So
Perfect.
Probably any other date, either of the other 2 dates versus the March 4th date.
That's why we do it. I appreciate it. I just crossed that off as one of our options. Thank you, Superintendent. Anybody else?
Can you state the dates again?
Sure.
Verify.
Our business meetings would be the 18th, and then our COW is on the 13th. So the COW starts at 4, and our business meetings start at 5:30.
So I know on the 18th, I will not be present at that meeting. So
Okay.
if we could do the COW meeting, that would be great for me.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Excellent.
I'm also going to check the calendar really quickly. I believe that spring break is the last week in March. Okay, so we're fine for that one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, I will get back to y'all as to what meets her needs the best. So thank you very much. And remember about the conflict of interest. And then I think we get started right away, board. I had mentioned to the superintendent, and I think I said in a memo that at least at the beginning of this, until the board figures out exactly how we want to proceed with the CAL, I've asked the superintendent to manage this meeting and the presentations. And so I now turn that over to our superintendent. Superintendent Wright?
Thank you, President Bolton. So we are starting first with the old business that's on the agenda. And from there, this is a review of the calendar and the calendar revision. So if you recall, we brought the calendar back in November. The board asked that we go back and have some conversations with some of our additional faith leaders around some of the dates that were in the calendar. We did such and got their feedback, also took it back to the calendar committee. And now what you have in front of you is the most recent recommendations and updates. The only thing that was, I think, the greatest change from what we shared in November was there was a recommendation from both the calendar committee and from our EIP committee that we do in partnership with our unions. Both of the unions, there was representation from CFT and CAS that are a part of that educator program that we work with, was the recommendation that we move spring break back to the last week in March like it was previously. So I think one of the reasons that the calendar committee had made a recommendation to change it is that there was one of the faith holidays that was during that week. And so we were working to be accommodating to equity. After doing some follow-up with the faith leaders, that was not one of the strongest holy days for that time. And so the district team really recommended, teachers, school leaders really recommended that last week in March. Also, I understand that historically, that last week in March, that Thursday is also opening day generally, and at least for this year it is. And so being a part of opening day last year, there is a concern that in previous years, it's also been a very high absentee day kind of across the district. So those were the only recommendations, the only changes in terms of recommendations based on what was given previously. So if you look at what I provided, on the first tab, we have the current calendar for 2024. And then the next tab, we have the overall day comparisons. There was more opportunity here to make sure that there was more time. The time was more evenly distributed between the two semesters. So that was one of the changes that was here. The spring semester has traditionally had more time built into that schedule because of testing. So that would continue. It just would not be as many days as there were before. The first proposals are at the end. The updated proposal for 25-26 is the next link. And the recommended proposals for 24-25, I did those out of order, is the final link. Outside of that, there were not additional recommendations. I'll open at this time and take any questions from the board.
Vice President?
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Wright. I did have a couple of questions with the proposed. I know that you said it's the last two. So on our slides for those who are either listening or watching, that would be 5 and 6, correct? That you're saying would be the final that you're proposing?
So actually they're linked, so we put them up as well on the document. So the first link, the where it says updated 24-25, so is the final.
So if I'm looking at board docs though, because that's currently what I'm looking at, which one would it be? I just want to make sure that those who are listening are understanding and we are looking at the same thing. So would that be the draft on pages 5 and 6?
Is this from board doc? Will you come out so that I can direct from here?
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
And so then my question, as we're trying to put that up, I just want to make sure that we're saying that the proposed 2024 and 25 would be the one that includes spring break for March the 14th to the 23rd. And then the proposed 2025 to 26 would be the spring break of March the 13th through the 22nd.
So on both of the updated documents that were provided, on the And I'll go from here as well, so we can
Okay.
show it from here.
Yes.
But if you look at the Excel that I sent to you, the fourth one in that says updated 24-25, you should see there for March, the highlight for the 24th through the 28th for spring break.
So I don't have the Excel in front of me because I wanted to look at what they're looking
Okay.
at.
So
can
let
we-
me
yeah,
go from here. So
Thank you.
if you will, Rob, I don't know where you are, so if you can go from the very big.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think Vice President Weinberg was asking which one of the documents. So how does the link actually look in Board Docs? If we'll come all the way out so we can take it from the beginning. Got it. Thank you. Okay. So so when you open Board Docs, the first thing you see is 24-25. That was the initial recommendation. I'm sorry, if we scroll down.
So yes, this
Here
one.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
One more down. Just keep scrolling. All right, right here. So from Board Docs, it's about the fourth sheet down. It's titled 24-25 Calendar Updated Recommendation.
Okay.
On this recommendation, March the 24th through the 28th is highlighted, and that was the recommended change for spring break for the 24-25 calendar. If you'll scroll up to the next one. Here we have the calendar, the recommended calendar, the 25-26, the updated recommendation. The change for spring break would be March the 23rd through the 27th. And the title of it is 25-26 calendar updated rec. You see it, Vice President?
I do. I just want to make sure if you could just state what would be the dates for spring break for the proposed one for the final. For 2024, 25, and then 2025, 26.
The 24-25 calendar on March are the recommended dates for spring break are the ones in the orange, March the 24th through March the 28th, that Monday through Friday.
And that's the proposed, correct?
Correct.
And I think I had it wrong here, so that's why I want to make sure, because I think some other people may have been confused. And then for the proposed for 2025 to 26, what would be the dates?
The dates on the calendar,
For the March.
25-26, the ones in the orange on the third week, March the 23rd through March the 27th.
Okay, thank you.
You're good. Any other questions, comments? I would only like to, two things, if I could. One, when opening day is.
We believe that it's the third, we believe that it's the fourth Thursday in March, which if these are approved at our meeting on Monday, then it would be while we're on spring break.
I think it's a brilliant effort in the calendar then, if we have opening day on both of those years.
We'll see. That's what they've told me so far.
We'll
So
see. We'll have to make sure the Reds are in tune with our calendar.
we'll
So,
see.
and any others? Okay, if we have that taken care of, this also is well within the standards of instructional time.
It is.
And so I think that's important to make sure that's part of whatever we release. And then we will be voting on this via your recommendations on the 22nd.
Yes.
Having no other discussion, then I think what we'll do is anticipate on the 22nd, we won't have to revisit this at all, if possible. Okay, thank you. Continue, Madam Superintendent.
Okay, at this time, we're moving to our curriculum updates, which include social studies and financial literacy. And our Chief Academic Officer, Shakitha Butler, is going to share those updates with us.
Great, welcome.
It's on the front, I think. It's on. It's on.
Okay. All right. Good evening to the board and Superintendent Wright. Thank you for allowing me to present our curriculum adoption process for the 23-24 academic year. Right now, we are currently reviewing our social studies and financial literacy curriculum for adoption. And so that's the presentation that I want to go through this evening, which is where we are in the process and what we are currently seeing and what we're piloting in schools. Next slide. So as you know, we have an 8-step curriculum adoption process. Right now, we are kind of fluctuating between step 5 and 7, where we are gaining engagement and feedback from the community and from our schools. Our committees are working through some of their final recommendations that we will bring back to the board. And then we're also providing a curriculum update to you right now at this time around what those current curriculum resources are. So for social studies, our current curriculum that's in use are the 3 that's listed here on the screen. TCI is our main core Tier 1 curriculum. It's used in grades K, kindergarten through 11th. We do have 4th grade curriculum from Ohio America, which is because it specifically drills into those 4th grade standards that are Ohio specific. That was not included in the TCI curriculum choice offerings. Our DBQ is an enhancement or a supplemental curriculum which provides students with rich project-based learning experiences within that curriculum platform concept. So it works to enhance what we currently have to make more real-world practical learning for the students. So these are the things that when we worked with our group, our panel for Curriculum Council, that we said we must have in a social studies curriculum for it to be considered for adoption. We always want to make sure that we're aligned to our Ohio standards. We believe in the accuracy of the historical context of the curriculum and the resource that's being presented to our students. It's essentially important that we are producing scholars that are critical thinkers, so we use all of our curriculum as opportunities to do that. We believe in integrating those standards with literacy. Social studies is an excellent way to enhance our literacy instruction, so we take advantage of that through our curriculum adoption. We want to make sure that it's bias-free and also that we provide real-world application for our students. This is just an overview of where we are in the process in alignment to that 8-step process and how it all intersects on the calendar. As mentioned, right now we are kind of vacillating between the engagement and feedback, committee recommendations, and the CAL update. As you can see, we're slightly ahead of schedule with our CAL update, and we are having our public display in February instead. So these are some things that are additional considerations outside of the must-haves, is to make sure that as we are going through our final recommendation and selections, that we're making sure that the offerings cover all of our grade levels. Again, that the literacy standards are integrated. During our pilot, we noticed that teachers were in the K-3 levels interested in print materials. Currently, we do not have print materials across the board for K-3. Our pilot teachers did participate in print materials, and it's receiving favorable commentary at this time. The vendors who participated in the pilot are listed here. As you can see, 3 of those are already in practice in our schools. The new vendors that we piloted this year in this adoption was McGraw-Hill and Studies Weekly, which is more of a newspaper type of format. Other things that we're considering is making sure that, so that we're being very budget conscious, that any pricing that we receive is consistent across the 5-year contract so that it doesn't change over time on us to reflect current inflation. So we want a consistent price throughout the 5-year adoption. Currently, this is what we have budgeted and that we have allocated towards our current curriculum. What we anticipate in cost based on the recommendations from the council is for us to either have a slight decrease or a slight increase in annual costs for the 5-year pricing. So again, this is just an overview of where we are in the process. We're right there at Q3, where we are working towards making a recommendation to the board to vote. For financial literacy, this came as a result of Senate Bill 1, where it went from something that's nice to do to now being a requirement. So now that it's a requirement, it comes with certain recommendations that we must have and must do for our students. Luckily, our students do receive a half credit for participating in financial literacy. That credit can either be in math or as an elective credit. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the way you look at it, some of those credits cannot come from the math subject areas listed, and it cannot count for a social studies credit. The social studies credit is mentioned as not counting because our instructors are social studies, so I know that seems kind of weird that you get a math credit but not a social studies, but that's the way the language is written. So this year, right now, any instructor with the credentials for 912 can teach financial literacy. However, moving forward, there is specific licensure that can teach. So the same, but also anyone who teaches social studies, family and consumer sciences, and business education will also, moving forward, be allowed to teach financial literacy. So where we are in the process with all of our curriculum, we start with recruiting teachers and putting together a panel to review our services, and we also always have pilots. So the curriculum that we piloted was curriculum from Junior Achievement, EverFi, and Next General Personal Finance. We also added an additional pilot from Budget Challenge that's not listed here, so that was also a resource that was piloted through our committee, and so the committee is still reviewing all of those resources in preparation for recommendation. The things that we must have had was similar to social studies. It has to be aligned to our standards. We want our students to have real world application for equity and cultural responsiveness to be a part of it, and that our students can truly see themselves in the financial space, and that the curriculum that they're engaging with deals with real budget challenges. It deals with real life things that they would encounter, like making a budget, making sure that they are not making decisions that would put them into debt. So something that they can just, skills that they can take with them for life. And we are in Q3 of this process as well, where we are finalizing our stakeholder input and in preparation for making a recommendation to the board. And now I will take questions.
Do any members have questions? Craig?
So first I want to say thank you for putting the materials together, and this is a good way to deliver all of this information that's really important for us to be thinking about, especially as we head into the district's budget. I wanted to ask a couple questions about the financial literacy part, because it does somewhat concern me, and again, I think this is just our state of Ohio issues that we will always have, that this is not something that can be part of a regular math curriculum or a regular social studies curriculum. Because I think this class fits perfectly into a lot of those same lessons. So it seems to be kind of taking time out of what could be a part of a normal class set of ideas or thoughts to make a new class that somewhat defeats the point. But I know our students wanted to know a lot of these things. So I think the first part of my kind of thought is just to say that I think this is sad that we can't include this as part of just a regular curriculum that they're already learning. You balance the checkbook by using basic math skills. It doesn't make sense to create a whole new class to teach you that type of thing. But the one question I do have is, with the financial literacy validation, is that something that we're going to have to explore as to how do we designate teachers who do not have that current licensure to get it? And is that something the state going to charge us for? Or is that something that requires any kind of additional work for us to do to get people that validation?
All right, so the first part of your question, prior to the Senate bill, we did exactly that. We integrated it into our math courses, we integrated it into our social studies courses where it fit. And some of my questions to the curriculum leaders of financial literacy was, do we have enough lessons and meeting this to what's being presented to us to fit in a full semester, and what are we losing by pulling it out of the way that we integrated it before. And so we feel pretty confident that it's worthwhile of a half semester course. And so we'll continue to monitor and make sure that it's something that's meaningful for our students. Because that was also my concern. As far as the credentialing, the way that it works is that the teachers currently credential in social studies or the 9-12 subject areas are qualified to teach financial literacy, so it would not be an additional endorsement that they would then need to go and seek out to teach the course.
Okay. And then just the other kind of follow-up to that is I know some of the schools have programs like Junior Achievement and some of these other things that have been incorporated into teaching the students these skills. And so is the thought process that we would kind of utilize some of those programs and to work with those particular classes as ways to enhance that educational opportunity?
Junior Achievement is actually one of the curriculum that we're using or that is being piloted as a potential option.
Other questions, comments? Dr. Moffitt?
So thank you for the presentation. This is a lot of information, and I do think that the public needed to know how we are complying with Senate Bill 1 and the extra requirements from what we were doing to now. I have, I was going to ask about partnerships, and you said that Junior Achievement is what we're using currently to administer the financial literacy requirement.
They are a part of the current consideration in the adoption.
Okay. How does Career Tech fit into this? So are we allowed to utilize the staff, the fund, the dollars, any type of Career Tech curriculum to fulfill this requirement?
Right now, we follow the state guidance with who we could partner with that had a full curriculum we haven't explored looking at Career Tech. I don't know that they would have it.
I think the issue with Career Tech right now is it has to meet that criteria, and so it has to be a separate course. So we would have to review if there are courses that would be available that would connect to Career Tech and the individuals are certified in the required certifications for the Senate bill.
Right. So
Okay.
a Career Tech teacher would have to adhere to those licensed certification in social studies or in a subject.
So are we exploring that option as a possibility now to find out,
Not-
I don't know that we have because it was a separate coursework. It was a separate course altogether. And so the recommendation was to align the courses with the subjects that were provided to us by the state.
So what about online capability for students that need that credit? Are we looking into online partnerships, online curriculum for not just our students in virtual, but the students that may want that extra credit as an online option? Are we looking into any type of online curriculum that would meet the requirement?
Much of our curriculum is serviced through an online platform, and so when we do the public review, it will be situated in that space. So the offering is through online. I think the question you're asking is if they can do it apart from having a teacher similar to our Edgenuity offering, and they can get credit without being in a brick and mortar class. Is that the question?
So my question is multifaceted. You're answering part of it. I'm looking specifically for students that want an online option singularly, but then also students that may want to fulfill the requirement online instead, whatever, like some students choose CCP versus some students choose AP, some students choose both. Is there going to be the possibility of fulfilling that requirement? It's just to have a credit as an online option for students who may want that. And then do we have staffing? And that's why I'm kind of connecting the Career Tech dollars with that as well. Do we have staffing that could provide that option for students that either need it or just desire? It used to be Apex. Edgenuity is now one of those options, but is there an already existing, or are we looking into purchasing an online option to have students be able to fulfill that online?
As you mentioned, our As you mentioned, our current online virtual option offering platform is through Edgenuity. We can look into what they offer within that software platform. We are currently not at this time looking to purchase anything outside of that, because right now, based on what we have, Edgenuity provides the NCAA approved credit, because everything is about making sure that our students can take those credits to college and that there aren't any violations there. So we trust what we have with Edgenuity through those NCAA guidelines. So I would start there with looking to see what they have within our course offering suite for financial literacy. Our current offerings that's within this curriculum adoption would not, from what I can see, satisfy that to the degree that Edgenuity has. So it would require a teacher of record.
Vice President?
I do have a couple of questions. Thank you so much for this. If you go back to slide 14, I don't know if we necessarily have to bring it up, but I just wanted to reference, I want to make sure that I understand. So the potential partners and program, the program would be the Junior Achievement of OKI. And then is this a potential partner, the EverFi and Next Gen Personal Finance? And I guess what my question is going to be is, are we able to have any other potential partners, such as any banking, I guess, companies here in the city that could possibly partner to produce or to help out with this financial literacy?
I think the way we are using the word partner is probably a challenge, because right now these three organizations have a curriculum that we can offer in a semester course. But they also are partners, right? So it's kind of bleeding together. So what we're calling partners is what we normally would call a vendor. So essentially, in this capacity, they're operating as a vendor of a curriculum that we would procure from them that's in requirement with our Ohio standards for financial literacy. I do believe that if we have partners that wanted to work with our students, like in any other case, those partnership rules would apply.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I'm not really certain of who the Next Gen Personal Finance, I have not heard about that. My second question would be, if we go back to the social studies, I think you stated there that we would bring back the data from the pilot program, or will that information be shared with the board in terms of how that data from the pilot, I guess, has resulted? I think it's stated something about in February.
We typically do not bring back the pilot data. That typically goes to the committee, the Curriculum Council Committee, for review. And then that is what influences their final recommendations that we bring back to the board.
Right, and I do think when we had to do the world studies curriculum, we were given some data of some points from the committee of what they felt was strong or what they felt was a weakness. So I just wanted to check and make sure that, since the board, that is one of our duties, is to approve and adopt the curriculum, that we are provided that information to make sure that we can make a sound decision. So would that be coming back sometime in February? I thought I saw something on the slide, or where it said the next steps, that it would be shared out with us.
I'll address. And you're correct, Vice President. And actually, Ms. Butler, you were involved in preparing the presentation. So the last one that we did give ratings for how the committee responded. That was really around the responses to the RFP more than it was specific to the responses from the pilot. But we can give feedback based on that.
Okay, because like I said, I think it included it, and it was actually really good that the board could ask further questions depending on, what you gave. So, okay, thank you so much. Great job.
Madam Superintendent?
If I could also add as well, so an additional partner that's right now has approached about being able to provide support here as well. That's not necessarily a curriculum that we would be looking to purchase, but they would really partner with us, partner with the teacher, is Fidelity Financial. So we're in the kind of the closing phases of what that partnership could look like, so that we'll be able to present that as well. But we think that it will really be positive for the students also, and being able to ultimately connect it to the curriculum. So that would be one of the partners that would be a little bit different than the partners that have the programs that we may purchase.
And if I could just comment to that, thank you so much, because that's what I was kind of hinting towards, because I know that we have some really good, businesses and companies here in the city, and I just wanted to make sure that we were looking at all those options. So thank you for that.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Member Knapp?
Yes, and thank you, Vice President Weinberg, as well as Superintendent Wright, because that was going to be one of my areas of focus, is making sure that we were able to have access to that feedback from the pilot. So thank you for inquiring about that. My other question is around the professional development and the training of the staff and the teachers around the curriculum. What does that process entail, or how often will our teachers be able to have access to the professional development to make sure that we are fully utilizing all of the resources within the curriculum?
Both, or just financial literacy?
Both.
Both. Okay. So with our social studies curriculum adoption, just like any core curriculum adoption, it does come with professional development services where teachers can have access as soon as we launch the approval. We typically start in the late spring with our initial training offerings, and that continues throughout the summer and the fall and throughout the course of the adoption.
Thank you. And then my other question around the curriculum, are you able to share any information around the student engagement process pertaining to the critical thinking and the application of the curriculum? So in terms of the curriculum that we're proposing or that we're suggesting, I know that going through the slides, it spoke about how it was to ensure that there is access to, or not access, but to ensure that students are able to experience and engage in critical thinking, as well as real life application. I'm just curious to know what that looks like as well.
Sure. So with social studies, currently what we have is the DBQ project, which has those rich project-based learning. So what it does is allow students to have a real-world experience with, say, creating a model for ancient civilizations, for example, in social studies. For the financial literacy, they would actually either have they would do a budget, or they would do a project. So as opposed to doing something that would be very far-fetched, like say planning a ski trip to Colorado, that may not be realistic for a high school student. So it may be something as simple as doing a budget to purchase your first car. So it's engaging, it's something that applies the standards, and it's real world of something that they could do in their immediate future.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I have just 2 or 3 very quickly. One, I know Mr. Morosky and I were here when the current social studies curriculum was adopted, and I think along with Member Davis, we were very proud. So I hope that this new adoption stands the test of the previous adoption, because I think it's about the most progressive social studies curriculum in the state, and that's what we want, and I appreciate it. The other 2 things, I love DBQ as a learning tool for all of our students. Another part that is of concern for me to make sure that we do, and that is the stakeholder involvement. I know our students are stakeholders. I know obviously our staff, and then also want to know when we are I think having to kind of go public with this prior to our adoption. Superintendent, are we going to be displaying? I know this, it's not like when you used to have books that you could put out on the table, but especially for social studies curriculum, because of the controversies that are involved with it. Can you tell me how we're going to be sharing this with the public?
Sure, and Chief Butler actually referenced it at the beginning without calling out, I think, overall the stakeholder engagement process. So after doing this presentation, we then set up times with the vendors for them to actually come in. I think they're actually coming, they will come to the district.
They will come to
And
the
then
district.
give a period of time to publicize that. We'll put it on all of our social media sites, send it out to staff. We'll send it across the board because it's open to everybody. So,
Yes.
for example, if you wanted to see the curricula that's being recommended, you're able to come in and do that. We do that for a period of time and let them give feedback from there. And then that becomes information that goes back to the committee for the committee to then review and based on that make additional recommendations. The other place that we also get feedback around that we get feedback from students on is from the pilots. So in working with the teachers that are doing the pilot, they do get feedback from their students that they're also providing around what they feel about each of the curriculums.
And so for social studies, social studies curriculum community engagement, we will have one in person, and then we will also have an ongoing virtual option where people can review what we have offered at will and provide us with feedback online through a survey link.
Great, thank you very much. And then this amount of money that you're listing here, is that the total cost?
That's currently the total cost and where we're looking to get to for the duration of the adoption. So the adoption cycle is 5 years. The goal is to get it consistent because we see that as we look at some of our past adoptions, there is an increase. And so as the years progress, you see an increase. So the goal is to get it consistent so that we know what to expect. And then from there, we know to make it a part of our budget process.
And then finally, on your timetable, we're looking at, by the board, an adoption no later than March something?
We're aiming
Oh,
for the end of February,
Correct.
but at the
Good.
latest
Right.
March. Also, to answer your question about funding, the 700 and something number that's listed on the side there is the annual cost.
Correct.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
thank you. No other questions? I think we're satisfied. So when we say yes to this, we're not doing the adoption now, but at least we have some direction regarding budget for
Correct.
this and assurance that the public will be involved with this.
Absolutely. We'll have one in person, and then after that, it will be publicized online so that individuals will be able to respond to it for a period of time. I believe the time period right now is 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks? Have we discussed the time period of 2 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, I'm sorry. So 3 weeks to respond and then take that information, get it back to the committee, because the goal for us is to really try to make sure that we get it back to the board. Really, the end of February is the goal so that we can go ahead and begin to move forward.
Thank you. If that takes care of it, then we'll move on to the next presentation. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
Butler.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Okay, moving into our last presentation for today, which is our monitoring from our monitoring calendar for our goals and guardrails. And so this is our update for today. And we will be covering guardrail 4, college credit plus, and career credentialing. For the next meeting, based on our monitoring calendar, we would review goal 4, guardrail 2 and its interims, and guardrail 5 and the interims with that as well. Just a reminder for goal 4. Goal 4 is the percent of Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students graduating with college credit plus or a workforce credential will increase from 47.6 in June of 2023 to 68% by June of 2027. So we broke this down in a few different ways. The first one that we're looking at around the criteria is the percentage of students that are on grade level in terms of the criteria for reading. And one of the reasons that we look at this, that we selected this one as a goal 4A, is the more students that we can get on target, the larger the population becomes that would be eligible for college credit plus coursework, because there are requirements that go along with where they are for that. And again, we want to make sure that our students are ready to also go into the CTE courses. So right now, we have for our combined students from the fall of, we have OST is from the fall from last school year at 35.2%. So that was overall the percentage of 10th grade Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students that were on target in reading. From MAP, that's our beginning of the year data from MAP, so that becomes our baseline information from the fall. And at that point, we had shown an increase from the fall of 2022-23 to this fall at 37.2. So we are seeing that we're on target for that as we are looking at getting to the 40% by May of 2025. Also I did put in the notes, I'll put in the notes here that, again, we've excluded 1920 because of COVID in terms of the data. And we're also looking at the annual 10th grade class and not the cohort because English 2 is the last reading OST exam. So just want to make sure that we're, so that we know the data that we're looking at here. If you're interested in the school by school data, as is customary in each one of these presentations that we do for you, you can link at number 5, the hyperlink. Anything that's hyperlinked has the data connected to it. And so you can click the data here to actually see the breakdown at a school by school comparison for what this looks like. So on target with this one as we're getting started. If we'll go to the next, that's for our 10th grade female students. The first one, I'm sorry, let me go back. The first one is for our ethnicity, so Black, Hispanic, and multiracial. Now we go to 4B, which is our population of 10th grade female students. Meeting the success criteria on OST will increase from 49.5% in May of 2023 to 55% by May of 2025. So at the end of the year, that data was 49.5% as shared. When we look at our fall benchmark data, looking at MAP, we're at 50.1% of our 10th grade female students that are meeting the success rate criteria. So that is a slight increase from where we were this time last year, and it's also a different cohort of students. So I do want to make sure that I'm sharing that as well. So we're on target in this area also as we think about trying to get to our 55% of our students that are on grade level for preparation for the OST for Goal 4. And the last ones for this one is the eligible students enrolled in our CCP courses will increase from 19% in May of 2023 to 30% in May of 2025. So last year we had 19% of our students that were overall, of our eligible students that were enrolled in CCP courses. We've increased that a little bit at this point in terms of where we were in the fall, but we have the rest of the school year to go. So the information that's provided for 2023 is for the entire school year. So that shares with us that we're on target because we also know that we have semesterized courses. And the eligible students enrolled in a CTE course will increase from 45.5% in May of 2023 to 54% in May of 2025. And we're also seeing a slight increase here as well, where in the fall we increased from 45.5% last year to 46.1% here. So this shows the percentage of all 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade students, plus any specific 9th grade students that may be in a course as well, because the denominator for that usually for your CTE starts at 10th grade. The eligible population is typically overall 10th through 12th grade, but if 9th grade students are in the courses, they're included here as a part of that percentage. And also you can see the individual school, if we'll go back, thank you. You can also see the individual school by school data as well for each of these areas. So why do we think these things are important or key takeaways as we think about where we are now and where we go for next step? First, we see that our growth in 10th grade, our 10th grade MAP is strong, but the fall for 2023 does include our students from Walnut Hills, and fall 2022 does not. So that is something that we noticed as we were going back looking at the data. So wanted to call that out so that as we move forward, we know what we're comparing as we look at the movement. On track to meet or exceed our current year goal based on our fall projections. So we're starting out where, while it's slight increases, we do see an increase from where we ended the year, and also thinking about we're just at the point of the beginning monitoring stage. So by the time we see the next monitoring, we will hope to see an update. And we also see improvement both in participation for CCP and for CTE. Overall, when we think about next steps, we want to continue to monitor our MAP data closely and make any additional adjustments or interventions, modifications that need to be made to make certain that we're getting students to proficiency and providing the necessary support for them. The other thing that we called out as we really started digging into the data a bit and talking to the team is thinking about the master schedule and making sure that the master schedule is also supportive of where students are able to take CCP courses and CTE courses. So for example, at the school sites, depending on how your schedule is done and what courses are available, there may be courses that students are eligible for, but they're not able to take those courses because of how it's organized in the schedule. So just really working at schools to start with thinking about planning for improvement with the master schedule instead of just the repeat of the schedule. So having your coursework there, but aligning it such that you're able to organize it so that you have opportunity for more students in participation. And then lastly, the graduation counselors are reviewing the student pathways to maximize graduation points as well as the CTE and CCP. So that work has started with them really doing the follow-up, working alongside the current counselors, working with the students so that we're looking at those pathways so that as we're moving forward, we're further strengthening those areas. And I think the last, this was not listed here, but also we're working with our specifically with our CTE team around additional planning in terms of preparation for, again, for staffing around credentialing. Because the more staff we can get credentialed, the more students we can get credentialed. So continuing to think through that, and the team has been very receptive to the work with that as well. I think that's the last one, so I'll open up for questions.
Thank you very much. Any
You're welcome.
questions, Mr. Morosky?
Thank you, President Bolton. Just one. Do we have, thank you for the presentation, and I really like being able to go break it down, by school, et cetera. Do we have, or is it possible to have by socioeconomic status?
So I want to say, I'm not sure, but let's let the team check.
Right.
Because some of the data is more difficult to pull by
Right.
socioeconomic status
That's what I was
because
wondering.
we have certain fields that it doesn't allow us to pull from. So let's check to see what we can
Cool.
find out, and we can be responsive to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Now, this data is by ethnicity, but we
Right.
can also look at the
Yeah,
other part.
thank you. And I know there's some challenges, and that's why I was curious, like if we had or if we could, so
We
appreciate
can
it.
check it out.
Thanks.
Mr. Craig.
Just want to, again, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to kind of, you hit on it a little bit in where we go with the next steps, but thinking about CTE in a way to really make sure that we're also maximizing the actual benefit of the CTE courses and work for the students, because I know that's one of the things we talked about when you all did the audit was that, yeah, sure, we have lots of folks signed up for CTE courses. How many of them get the necessary credentials, or how many of them actually can use this knowledge that they're getting and take it out into a marketplace to do the work. And so I just curious to see how we're thinking about that. And then the other part to it was I was actually happy to see the adjustment to the master schedule might be one of those factors we look at, because one of the conversations we've had over and over again is that if you got English class at the same time, you're supposed to have this, guess which one is going to go first?
That's right.
If you have math class that you have to do before this is going to be able to be offered, guess which one comes more, which one's more important. And so rethinking some of that will allow some students to be able to take advantage of those opportunities.
So a couple of responses to that. As we shared when we shared the CTE audit, the state does not require the credential for the class. And so there are students that participate in programs, and then there are students that are completing programs. What the state requires is the web exam. And so where the focus has been, nor do they fund for students to take the credentials like are done in some other places. However, where we are as a group and working with our CTE team is, one, working with teachers to, as much as possible for our pathways, to get them credentialed in an area, because in order for them to take the credentialed exam, they have to take it from someone that's already credentialed. So that's one. The second is we have also spent time through professional development. We have another session that comes up at our next professional development day, and our CTE manager has really led with this as we've really talked about next steps as a follow-up to the CTE audit, is making sure that teachers are aware of the requirements for the courses that they're taking, for the exam, so forth and so on. The third thing is there are a couple of organizations that have been able to give some feedback around how they are supporting even the web exams. But the web exams is only for the state of Ohio. However, even though that's where we get the points, if you will, on the state report card, it's not recognized in terms of students actually getting credentialed. In terms of additional experiences, internships, externships, work study programs, that's been a focus across the board, so that we're beginning to further continue, because the team had really already started working on that, but to really further continue the connection from the classroom into turning that into the world of work for the students. So a lot more really needs to be done in that space to make sure it's aligned, but it's on the radar, and there's planning that's it's already being done for it. In some instances, it's increasing what's already started.
Are there any other questions or comments? Dr. Moffitt?
So thank you for this data and for the update. I would be very curious to get, I clicked on the link for 4A on slide 4. When I click on the link, I do have the school data, but it's not broken down by ethnicity. So I would really be interested in seeing, of those schools that are listed. If you click on the link, Rob, that's great data, but that's not disaggregated by ethnicity, but yet this goal is by ethnicity. So I would be interested to see the particular goal for each slide. Like for instance, this is, you can say here, this is goal 4A, the percentage of 10th grade Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students meeting the success criteria. When we say that there are, let's say, 32.2 Black students, which is very disheartening, and 36.5 Hispanic students, I don't see that, I can't see that represented in this chart by school. So I would like to have additional data added to the spreadsheets to reflect the ethnicity population of each of those schools, so that I can see that data by ethnicity per year to see that it has what it is, particularly because this particular goal is around ethnicity. Rob, if you go back to slide 5, the percentage of 10th grade female students, again, when we look at 2022, 2023, 40% male, 38.2% female Black. Again, this is a ethnicity goal. When we click on that data for 4B, click on that, Rob, please. Again, it needs to be disaggregated similarly. So I would like to see these particular slides with that data, or just, you know, the spreadsheet to be reflective of ethnicity per school, so that when we do go and look at budgets around schools, particularly in reference to these goals, we can see how much are we spending per student, per school, and look at some of the resources that are there that will actually impact this particular goal. We can speak about the percentage change of being 0.2 and the white student for Black, and then the white students at 2.1, but that's not really representative of what it's taking to get there. And then looking at moving forward, if we're talking about cutting resources per school, whether that be staffing or other resources, how is that going to impact this particular goal? So I think this data is great. I would just like to see a little bit more context on each of those slides. So slides 7, 6, 5, and 4, to have the data correlate to what the particular, on the spreadsheet, to what the particular goal is addressing with regard to ethnicity. And I look forward to that data.
Thank you. So I think the only thing that I would request for that is, as we are pulling that data, we're pulling that data for now. Because the way that when we've had these discussions previously and we've had to try to go back and pull data for previous years, it hasn't not necessarily been aligned the same way. So I think as we move forward, we'll work with the team to see what kind of response time we can get for that. And I do understand the ask. But in terms of us moving forward, my request would be that we start from where we are now and then moving forward, because we understand how we're aligning the data systems to do that versus the time for the team, as we've talked about some data things before, to then go back to the multiple years to try to do that same breakdown based on ethnicity.
So I'm all for looking at, I think the way that we have this data, we can go back as far as we have the data here. I don't want to see, a decade, but we have demographic data per school. We have that, so we can put that there. I don't know if we're going to have testing data, but surely the demographic data is there, and that already exists. Even if we just go back 1 or 2 years, or the same criteria that you used to collect these years, I think it's very applicable for moving forward. And I'm just asking that we get some, with regard to this particular goal being ethnicity, it needs to have data reflected that. So if as far back per school as we can go would be great. Again, I'm not exactly certain if we can have OST and MAP data, but we have a percentage change here. So there has to be something involved in getting that percentage change. So I think the data exists. I don't think it should be that difficult, but for sure this particular year and last year, for certain, whichever you use to get that percentage change should definitely be consistent, but for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Vice President?
Yes, I just have one quick question, and Superintendent Wright, is just regarding CCP. As a parent and of someone who is getting ready to possibly do this, I am happy to see, of course, that it has increased from 2022 to 2023 till now. Just curious as to, maybe why some of those numbers have gone up, and what are we doing to really, educate families and make sure that they're aware?
So thank you for the question. So we've been working in partnership with our school counseling team. A lot of the work around CCP is led by our counselors, as well as our district manager that works with college readiness. So we've had a couple of opportunities where, even through one of them, I actually think was through Parent Academy, where there was a presentation that was done. I believe it was virtual. I know it was done by our team during College Week back in October, to try to make sure that we were preparing the information for parents and families. So I think there's more to do in that space. One of the ways that I do believe that we're beginning to see an increase is we are really working to start earlier with some level of notification about eligibility requirements, the coursework, the GPA that students have to have, so forth and so on. So we will see these numbers increase, I do believe, over time, just like we're beginning to see that happen, because we've made it an intentional focus as well. And it's allowed us, one of the things that our goals and guardrails do for us, it does allow us to prioritize. And we've prioritized as an overall team some of the things, not the only things that matter, but some of the things that matter the most to overall student achievement. Also, the other thing that I will add, in getting feedback from students and thinking about coursework, making sure that they know all of the options for CCP courses. So, for example, we have several of our students that are taking the CCP courses actually at the institution, at various institutions across the city. And so making sure that we're also nimble and flexible when it comes to that. Some of them take the classes in the evening. And so how are we really working through that to make sure that they know that that's something that's available for them?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lindy?
Thank you very much, President Bolden. Thanks, everybody, and I apologize for running a few minutes behind this afternoon. I want to say a couple things. I think one, big picture, I'm so glad that we are continuing to do this. I think the most important function that a good school board can do at kind of at this point in where we are is monitor for accountability on the outcomes for students that we decided based on what we heard from our community was most important. So I just wanted to share my gratitude and enthusiasm for the report and for the priority. I mean, this was not our idea. This is what we heard from the community, but focusing very closely on what kids are doing after they graduate. And I think that I just continue to feel so strongly that this is right in being one of those most important 5 student outcomes, and that we have the focus on it. And I think, you know, I do like what we used to do here in CPS around enrolled, enlisted, or employed. And also, I think this adds a level of rigor that is so much stronger. Because employed can mean lots of different things, but are we really preparing students for choices about the kind of career that would have real economic mobility behind it? And so I think this outcome really matters, and I'm glad we're spending time on it, so thank you. I also think the data quality is excellent. Just from this board member's perspective, there's no additional information I need to see. I think this is very helpful. I also wanted to just like size the improvement that we're seeing, because I wanted to just make sure I was reading this the right way. I appreciated the link to the individual schools because the Walnut thing is tricky. And I wanted to know, is the inclusion of Walnut what's really driving the increase? And so when I looked at it, I wanted to make sure I'm reading this correctly. There's a column that says fall 22-23.
Which?
So sorry, I was following goal 4A on slide 4. There's a link at the bottom that takes you to the school by school data. And I was trying to make sure that if I'm interested in looking at, you know, where are we seeing improvement outside of the inclusion of the Walnut numbers, I still think, at least if I'm looking at this the right way, that the headline is really strong. We're basically comparing those last 2 columns. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So if that's the case, then we're seeing like 14.8% improvement at Dater and, you know, 15.8% improvement at Taft. So I wanted to check that we are in fact seeing really meaningful improvements in the number of kids who are reading on grade level, even outside the inclusion of Walnut Hills.
That is correct. So if we're looking at goal 4A and 4B, and Rob actually has it up on the slide as well, this is based on the benchmark data. So this would be based on MAP. So based on MAP, the comparison here, because we take MAP in the fall, and then we compare MAP in the fall from 2022 to MAP in the fall to 23-24. So this is the individual improvement for each of those schools. So if we look at this, for example, Aiken went from 14 to 21, CDA went from 53 to 67, just using those top 3. Clark went from 51 to 56. So while Walnut, in the fall of 22, Walnut didn't take the assessment, so that's why they weren't included. So this is the baseline for them. They are now involved in all of the assessments that we're doing. So that was the baseline for them. But the other schools, I really believe that we only had one high school. We did, I think only one high school, and that's on row 20, that showed a decline from the fall to the fall.
Yeah, I think so. I think the reason I was bringing this up is, to me, this looked like incredibly encouraging news, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing the lead. And I'm also not used to seeing improvements of 10 percentage points in a year. Like, it's a very large number.
Correct.
I'm hearing all that the right way.
That's correct.
Well, so thank you. And I think that's worth celebrating. I think I do believe in both sides. Like, I want us to be clear-eyed about where we are winning, and then also not sugarcoat things that are challenges. So when I was looking at the 4C, I think it was 4C, I think I just wanted to, could you talk a little bit about, and maybe this is what was coming through in Mr. Craig's question, like, I don't know what levers we have to make this better by the end of the year. Like, are there things that schools can do to help get us where we want to be when it comes to CCP credit before the year's over?
So this information is coming from the fall. So that means that this would include this would include the students that were involved in CCP courses for the first semester, because many of the courses are semesterized. So we do expect to see an improvement because in many of the courses, there's a different population that goes into certain courses for the second semester, which we are in the second semester right now. So when we do the update for this particular guardrail or for this particular goal for our next monitoring, it will be students that are currently, that have also been enrolled since the beginning of the school year because they're in those courses. So that would be we expect to see a difference. But again, we do go back and look at the overall denominator, to look at the students that are eligible and determine based on that how many of them actually enroll.
And that makes sense, and I appreciate it. And I hope there's much to celebrate there too. I would just close by saying that the 10 percentage point increase in kids who are reading on grade level in high school, big deal. And I'm grateful for it.
Thank you. And I do want to caveat that was for populations, that was overall. But we're also talking about, it was the focus for 10th grade as well. So the grade levels and then the different ethnicities. So just want to make sure that we caveat that as well. But I agree that it's important for us to celebrate the celebrations because any improvement is good improvement. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yes. Superintendent Wright, thank you for sharing this data with us. I'm curious to know, while we see this on kind of a macro level, I'm curious to know if within our schools or school-wide, if our administrators provide this information to students and parents, maybe hosting kind of an opportunity to share the data that's more specific to their school so that it's more tangible and more real and relevant to what they're experiencing. Is that something that's offered, or is that something that can be offered so that we can get a clear picture and the students and parents are also able to get a real gauge about what the data looks like for their respective schools?
Right. So we do recommend across the board that schools are having regular conversation with families. In all transparency, there are some schools that do and there are some schools that don't. Not as consistently. So where you see most of, because we've organized our district, our one plan around our goals and guardrails, a part of that is the expectation for conversations with staff, for conversations with parents around those goals. And then after the data comes out, to share that with families. So make it a part of the data going culture. That's been an area of growth for us over the last year and a half, because that's not something that had been consistently a part of the way that we've done the work across the board. So I think we're seeing more comfort from school leaders in having data that they can use as tangible and then being able to share that with them. So I think we'll continue to see improvement in that area as well. Thank you. You're welcome.
Are there any other comments or questions? Dr. Moffitt?
So I don't want to minimize the celebration of the 10% percentage points that Mr. Lindy spoke about. If I'm missing it, then I'd love to be to clarify. If we go back to the chart for 4A, for the spreadsheet, I'm sorry, for 4A, if we just looked at I think former President Lindy brought up Aiken 14 percentage points. Can you tell me how many of that are Black? How many of that are Black female? How many of that are white? Because I don't want to minimize it, but if I can tell from that number, I'm happy to not ask for any extra work.
This is the data that we have in terms of this. Okay, so I understood your question.
No, I know it, but Mr. Lindy said he didn't need any extra data, so I just wanted to understand how he could see it and I couldn't. And if I get it, if I can get it, I'm not trying to add extra work on our team. I completely value everything that we have. Since this particular goal spoke about ethnicity, I wanted to see how I could see that 14%, what that includes, doesn't it? How many of those are Black female? How many of those are Hispanic female, male? And that's what I'm asking for. So I want to celebrate the win. I think it's a win, but I also would just like to see how it relates to the goal. So I don't mean to add extra work on your team. I just wanted to see how that relates to the goal, or we need to change the goal. But thank you.
If I can also just add one thing. Thank you, Board Member Moffitt. we too, and I think that this is an ad, the 3 E's is one of the historical things in the district that is really exciting to me to work through and work with the team on it. The way that speaks to me, and if there is a different direction from the board, but the way that speaks to me is our goal, you know, by the time students graduate, is to know that they know their next steps, and the goal is to have them in one of these spaces. So if they're not enrolling in college, which we want them to enroll in college, for those that enrolling in college is what they choose to do, if they're not enrolling in college, we want them to be able to do any of those things and do all of them if they choose to do that, but knowing for each of our graduates which of those things you're going to do next, and making sure, as we also see as a part of our mission, vision, our goals, as well as our strategic plan, that we want you to enroll, we want you to enlist, we want you to employ. And an additional part of employ is really making sure that we have the skills necessary for the students to move into the roles that they're looking to do, especially if they don't plan to go to college. So this board has talked quite a bit about our CTE program, and we understand the importance of that, but making sure that students are getting those paralleled experiences. So we are continuing to lift the 3 E's because it's really paramount to where students are and where we want them to go next. And it's just been amazing work in terms of focus that the district has already done. We want to go to the next step, so we actually have kids that are also getting credentialed because that's equally as important to the work they're doing. So just wanted to share that in terms of the 3 E's.
Any other comments or questions? If not, we've finished our presentations. Appreciate it, Superintendent. We've done the goals and guardrails. We've done the curriculum piece. Appreciate that, and also the calendar for the district. So I think we've gotten a lot done. At this time, the board would entertain a motion to recess into executive session for the purpose of employment of public employee or official.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Vice President. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. And for the edification of the folks that are here, we're going to recess into executive session for that one issue. And then we will reconvene into public just because we're required to by law, but there will be no business to be conducted, and that'll be adjournment out of recess from executive. So thank you all. Good meeting. Appreciate it.
Madam,
Let's make our 50
Need to-
yards. Oh, no, hold on. Good meeting. I'm going to tell you all before we see if we have a unanimous vote to go. It's 50 yards to the building room where we're going, and we have to do it fast. Try to keep it within our efforts. So now, for a unanimous vote, Mr. Gaston.
thank you. Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Ms. Mapp,
Yes.
Dr. Moffett, Mr. Morosky,
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg,
Yes.
President Bolden.
Yes,
Unanimous
unanimous
as
vote.
it is.